Latona is music publishing administration software. We have been following its creation since July. From now on, I will be focused on user tutorials. In this one, interested parties and original publishing agreements will be covered. Latona is a commercial extension to free open-source Django music publisher, linked above. In this part, we will be covering authors of musical works, usually referred to as writers, and music publishers. We will start by clicking on Add Next to Writers in Interested Parties and Agreement section. This form will appear. Let's have a closer look. It has 4 parts. In the first, you enter writer's name. Note that only the last name is required, signified by the bold label. In the second, you enter writer's IPI name and base number. In the third, you enter writers collecting societies. Writers can have multiple, territorial affiliations, although, this is still quite unusual. I covered it in a separate video, linked above. As shown in this example, the first territory must be set as default, meaning all territories not explicitly specified. This is how it would look for a writer affiliated with PRS. And here, if the writer has multiple affiliations. Note that, in some countries, writers are affiliated with mechanical right organizations, while in most, they are only affiliated for performance. The fourth part is where original publishing agreements are shown, but they are entered elsewhere. We will come back to this view once we have covered them. Note that there are 3 save buttons. We will use the simple save, on the far right. It saves the writer and takes us to the list view. Note the message in the green box and the top, informing us that the writer was created. You can edit a writer by clicking on the link in the first table column. Another button to add a new writer is on the right side, next to the Help button. You may have noticed that Help buttons are always orange. Once you have entered many writers, you will want to use searching. You can also sort the table by almost any column or combinations of columns. Let's explain the columns now. Codes in Latona are assigned automatically, though in some cases they can also be imported. In the next 3 columns is the data we just entered. Next we have 3 columns, agreements, works and statements. The number shows us numbers of agreements for this writer, of works this writer has authored or co-authored, and of royalty statements. More importantly, they serve as links. Let's click on 3 in the agreements column for Common Cartoon. Before we dig into original agreements in Latona, let me tell you that the name is a misnomer. It does not mean original in the historical sense. It means an agreement between a writer and a publisher. Here is the list view for original publishing agreements. Note that in the first filter, named Active, all is selected. This means we can see all agreements, both active and inactive. Let's add an agreement for Toonson. In the Add view for original agreements, we have 3 sections. In the top one, you can set an agreement as active or inactive, as a general or specific, and enter an internal description. Note that, by default, an agreement is set to inactive. Also note that one writer can have only one active general agreement. We will cover this again, when we will be covering entering musical works. In the second, you select the parties, a writer and an original publisher. These fields support autocomplete. In the third, you enter the shares transferred from the writer to the original publisher. We will discuss this in more detail when we will cover entering works and again when we will discuss registrations. There you enter publisher fees. We will have a much closer look when we will be discussing royalty statements. Once you have entered all the data correctly, press on Save. Our new agreement is at the top. Remember, you can sort this table by most columns. Note that, now that we have agreements with 2 writers, a new filter appeared. You can also filter by a writer. Let us briefly look at publishers. The interface is very similar to writer interface, the only difference being a single name. We can see here how original publishing agreements are listed at the bottom, same as for writers. We have skipped a very important and quite large topic, society assigned agreement numbers. They are required for registrations in some collective management organizations, also known as societies. They will be covered in a separate video. Here is the aforementioned video about multiple affiliations. Here is the whole Latona series, and here are just these tutorials. Please share with music publishing professionals. Like and subscribe, so more people would benefit from our videos. Thank you and goodbye.